Looking for clarity and confidence when it comes to decision making for your business? You've come to the right place. You're now listening to the Atomic Business Coaching Podcast.
Tom Marino, what is mindset?
Mindset is a way of thinking that leads to specific behaviors. You know, you have an abundant mindset, you recognize everything you have, and when you recognize everything that you have, it allows you to act in a way that you have everything that you have, and you don't lead with lack. You find things that are going to fill you up and things that are going to continue to bring you the abundance that you already have. But mindset is this way of thinking that creates behaviors. It also serves as, fundamentally there are beliefs and there are values that become all part of a mindset. And I like to think of it as just as a way of living, way of thinking, and a way of behaving.
Then if you say it ties to values, why are so many people focused on getting their mindset to a point where they feel it's acceptable?
Well, I think that a lot of people don't really know what they value and what they believe. And I think that what comes into play with a lot of people trying to get to a certain mindset is they need to really relearn who they are and what they truly believe and what they truly value, because so much of our belief system comes from when we're kids and what gets imposed upon us, and what we don't always believe it when we become adults, because our experiences or our ideas, our thoughts just don't support and validate those beliefs that we have. And, beliefs form your values. So if you believe that you are a good person or you believe that you are respected, well, that leads to a value of being trustworthy or having integrity, or being someone who's respected and gives respect in return, right? If you don't know what you believe, you can't know what you value. And if you don't know what you value, you don't have the standards to live your life by, right? Values provide that standard. And, and if you have those values, then you got to formulate those values into a mindset. So if time freedom or if time with your family is a value of yours, well, then everything that you do in your mindset is to be able to act and be that way. So you have the time for your family, or you have the freedom of time in the things that you really want to do. But it's just an evolution from belief to value to mindset. And because all of those things create the behaviors. And that's really the biggest thing is the behavior that comes out of the mindset. It's the way we act that is so fundamental to our mindset. And that's what changes everybody's life. When you shift the mindset and you shift the perspective, you learn, you grow, and then you behave like a learner and a grower, not someone who feels that the impossible can never happen. I was listening to something recently, and they said, you have control over your reality because you choose it. You choose your reality, right? If you choose to live pitifully and weak and victimized, that's your choice. If you choose to live prosperous and healthy and wealthy and happy, that's your choice. We really have choice over our reality. And I think the mindset can only foster that reality for us. And if you believe and have values that fit into that reality, well, then it makes life that much easier.
So for mindset and values, is that then something that we have or something that we choose?
I believe it's a choice. I really believe that we choose our mindset, because if you wake up in the morning and you don't feel great, you could choose to have a shitty day. I mean, your day will be shitty if you choose that. If you choose to make the best of it and see what opportunities come from it, well, you choose that. I really believe that everything that we do is based on choice. Like, we either choose to be successful or not. You either choose to be who you are or you choose to be somebody else. Right. And I think that's what people don't recognize when they are in this fixed mindset, right? When you're in a fixed mindset, you tend to victimize, you tend to have to be right, you tend to be defensive, and you're closed off from the rest of the world because you are not seeing that your choice, you can make a voluntary choice. Choice is a voluntary thing. And when you make that choice to stay there instead of getting better, well, now you're choosing your reality. But if you chose to learn more, if you chose to come out of yourself and learn, you grow, and those choices are what allow you to keep growing, right? You could water a flower and you can choose to let that flower die or grow, depending on how much water you decide to give it, right? And that's how we have to think about life is, what do you want to water to make it grow? And what do you need to kill? Because there's sometimes things you need to get rid of. There's times that you do need to make a choice to remove something that's not serving you, that's not good for you. But it's really, life is all choice. It's all choice.
So I've heard you many times talk about this concept of the inner bully. And I'm wondering if maybe you can describe that. What does that really mean? It's not a term you hear very often, but it seems something that you truly are passionate about.
Yeah, there's so many ways we get judged, and that's really what I mean by the inner bully. It's we judge ourselves. When you think of a bully, when I was a kid, I was bullied, as I'm sure many people out here who may be listening were bullied. And, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they felt like they were being seen for the first time because they had always been put into the shadows by the bullies. And we have so many things outside of ourselves that bully us, or we have external factors that influence who we are. And we have enough of that nonsense that comes in from the outside. And then when you look at yourself, and if you did something that you weren't proud of, or you did something that wasn't successful, or it didn't have the outcome that you anticipated, you tend to beat yourself up for it. If you are, and I want to point out that when you have this inner bully, and it's a strong inner bully, I need you to recognize that you are probably someone who likes to grow and who has a growth mindset. When you're being bullied and you hear your internal judge bullying you on something that you did, I need you to recognize that if you point the finger at other people, you're living in a fixed mindset, right? Because that inner bully, if you start to point, well, they did that and they did that and they screwed up, I didn't do anything wrong. That's kind of like where the inner bully is supporting you, right? But when the inner bully beats you up, it's really because you're trying to learn something. So when we talk about the inner bully, we talk about a lot of sabotaging habits that we have developed over the course of our childhood. And I talk about the saboteurs often in my work as a coach. And, sabotaging habits are changeable habits when you start to really see what they're there for. And anything that is fear or a sabotaging habit or an anxiety is really all there for us to learn something new and to make changes. And we have to quiet that inner bully's voice in our head to be able to see the opportunity that is truly in front of us. Because the inner bully does not want you to grow. The inner bully just wants you to feel like shit. It wants you to beat yourself up. It wants you to live in fear and stress and anxiety and doubt of who you are. But when you minimize and you lower that inner bully's voice, you become someone who really can see that there is so much more that you can learn and that you can innovate and that you can navigate through very successfully. And you find more of the opportunities and you no longer see things as challenge. But that inner critic, inner bully, that judge, whatever you want to call it, is in every single one of us because it is the thing that we try to align ourselves with society standards that everybody has. but yet we may not always agree with those standards. And when we go against those standards, that judge and that inner bully starts to beat us up. Imagine if you just remove that inner bully. Imagine if the inner bully just went away and you didn't have judgment. And it was all just like, well, what do you want to do? And is that good for you? Is that beneficial to you? Does that work for you? Now, obviously, we don't want to do evil things that hurt people, but we have to start to really look at things without judgment. Because when we look at things without judgment, we actually see the opportunities.
So it's interesting because the inner bully is an inward and outward judger, so to speak. So it must be people who have that constant conflict for themselves.
Yeah.
Huh.
That's a very good point. They're in conflict with themselves because when we judge ourselves and we judge others or we judge situations, right? That's the external. We're judging situations. What we have to recognize that what we typically judge in somebody else or some situation is usually something that we ourselves have difficulty with that we know we have to work on, but it's much easier to point the finger in the other direction out to the people that are doing. And we walk around with mirrors, okay? Every person that is in our life is a mirror of something of us. And if you start to see everyone as just a reflection of you that's in your environment, and you become more aware of what you're judging in them, I guarantee you when you turn around and you ask yourself, do I have that same thing I need to work on? You're going to recognize that, yeah, you do. Because it's not coincidence that anyone is put in your life. Everyone is put in your life for a reason. They're either put in your life for a very small amount of time or for a very long amount of time. And every relationship is meant to serve you in some way. It is meant to benefit and teach you in some way. And oftentimes the weakness or the thing that you see in somebody else that you judge is often the thing that you have just been avoiding working on in yourself. So if you see the world as everybody's just a reflection of you, then you start to really see how you can make yourself better. But you have to make the choice to do that. But when we just blame and point fingers at everybody else and go, oh, look at how bad they are or what they're doing. And, we just judge it all and we do nothing for ourselves. Well, we become very judgmental and we become taken over by that inner bully. And we stay in that fixed mindset of never allowing ourselves to grow. And that's what the conflict is.
So I want to take it in a different direction.
Okay.
Baseball.
Yeah.
Something many people know is very important to you, but it's your son that's playing baseball. So why is it so important to Tom?
That's a great question. I grew up loving the game. I went to my first Mets game and I still have the ticket stubs upstairs in my house. I went to my first game on my 5th birthday. And it was a thing that my aunt and my uncle brought me to. And I think it wasn't my parents who brought me to my first game. It was my aunt and my uncle. My uncle died when I was 15. And it was the thing that connected me and him. It was the thing that really bonded us. And he was an uncle through marriage. My aunt, my godmother, my father's sister, this was her husband. And I just loved that man so much. And we did everything baseball and everything, he loved the game. He loved it. And I really feel that the reason why I love it so much is because of the bond that I had with him. And when he died, he died of a massive heart attack at 39 years old. And I really believe that the reason why my son is so good at baseball is because he's had some intervention in that along my journey of life, right? I've never felt that I've never lost his presence in my life. And baseball is important because I know how it bonded me and him. And he was a Mets fan and my own father is a Yankee fan. And we've always had that rivalry in our household. And the thing that bonded me and my Uncle John was the game. And I think that's where I realized when Andrew, my son, when I recognized he had the talent for the game at 18 months old, when he threw me his first ball, I realized that was one of the ways I could bond with my son. And bonding, I didn't have, and my father's still here. I don't have the greatest of relationships with him. I don't have that strong bond that a father and son have. And I think baseball has been the thing that brings Andrew and I closer together because we spend a lot of time together. I travel all over the country with him because he gets to play in all these great places. And the other part of it is he has the talent, and he has the talent that I never had for a game like that. And I wouldn't want to do anything that doesn't encourage and doesn't foster his ability to play that game. His goal is Division I baseball. We have 3 years left to make that a reality. And it has just become a central part of everything that I do because I just love it because I get to be with him. I don't get to every game. I get to the majority. When I'm there, it's my happy place. My happy place is stepping onto behind the backstop to watch him play. And that's the best part. But I think it really originated with my uncle, who it's crazy to think will be gone 32 years this month. It's just insane to think that it's been that long.
So much of your work that you've done in a variety of different businesses is all centered around awareness and mainly self-awareness. And you have always talked about how important that is. Why is it so important?
I think I embrace a phrase by Deepak Chopra about being spiritual is really being self-aware. That's the only definition of spirituality, is having a self-awareness and knowing where you are in the world. And I've always, I grew up a very religious person, and I learned through my experiences and my beliefs changed. And I really focus more on spirituality and being more self-aware to be the best version of myself so that I can be the best for everyone I encounter, right? That's part of what life is about. Is I believe my sole purpose is to connect with other people, to help other people navigate their challenges and whatever else they have in their life that they need help with. And in order to do that, I think you have to embrace a level of spirituality. And that spirituality is just how well you're aware of yourself and your actions and the things that you do. And again, it all ties back to mindset. You can make this very much about mindset too. Spirituality is that self-awareness, and that self-awareness comes from having a growth mindset that you can recognize the things that you want to improve. And it's all circular in so many ways. And I think that, like, as a coach and in all these businesses, and no matter what I did, whether as a physician assistant or as a healthcare executive, I always wanted to build people up and not tear people down. And building people up, to me, is helping them to become more self-aware of what they possess as skill and what they possess as talent and who they are as who they are, right? Their being. And I think when you're very self-aware, you get to be more of who you are, and you get to be the most authentic version of you. And I think that's really what's important. And I want other people to be helped with that. And that's what you're not supposed to put any guarantee on work you do with people, but that's the guarantee that I give every person that I work with, is that you are self-aware. And through your self-awareness and working with me to help you to become more self-aware is the thing that's going to come out of any experience. And that's really everything in life, is to become more self-aware, because I do believe in the evolution of the soul, and that we live in vibrations, and that we are all energy, and there is ways to raise our vibrations, and being spiritual, being self-aware is part of that vibration, right? People who are not self-aware, people who struggle with self-awareness, people who live more in a fixed mindset, their energy is lower. There is a gradation of energy, a vibrational energy, and that lower energy is very much the basic human form. Whereas if you become more spiritual, you look at spiritual leaders like a Deepak Chopra, he vibrates at a very high energy because of his level of spirituality, which is really his level of self-awareness and where it fits in the world. And I think that's an important part of what I give people is an awareness to raise their energy, to have a higher vibration and get more out of life in this physical form that we're in.
When people think about or discuss or seek self-awareness, many of the times it's for them, the human being, the person, the husband, the wife, the brother, the sister, the father. And most of your work is centered around business owners and very high impact executives. How do you transition from what most people's stigma is, and just for me, the person, over to them, the leader of that organization?
Yeah, I think that's a tough one. But the real simple answer to that is you're the same person. You are a father or a mother. You are a daughter or a son. You are the aunt or uncle, the brother or sister. You are all of those things for someone. And I think when I bring it into leadership, what we talk about is conscious leadership, right? I love that book. I love the commitments of conscious leadership. I love the thinking behind conscious leadership. And I think for me, as when I work with a business owner, I work with somebody that's in an executive level, to really truly be successful at that level, you have to have a tremendous amount of self-awareness. You have to be able to be a leader for many, and you have to recognize and be aware that every action that you take and everything that you do within that company, within that environment, is being watched. And if you are not aware enough that you are influencing people that strongly, you can really lead people down a bad path, and you can lead your company into bankruptcy. You can lead your company to a place that's extremely negative. So for me, it's a simple transition, because it really comes down to, you want to be a good executive, you want to be a good owner, you have to have an incredible level of self-awareness. And you have to be willing to be the dumbest person in the room as that leader. You can't be the smartest person in that room. You have to surround yourself with people who are hopefully aware, but also very intelligent, and understand your vision and understand what you're trying to carry out for your organization. But unless you possess a self-awareness, you can't really set a vision. You can't really set a company in motion if you don't know yourself, where you fit into that and how you fit into that and what it's going to take to get there.
Beautiful. There's something going on in the world right now that we're seeing more and more of, which is stress and anxiety. And it seems like, compared to previous generations, more out there in the open. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think there's a lot, there's very interesting statistics on post-COVID depression and anxiety. I think that's had a big influence in the last 4 years, is the whole pandemic and the fear that was created because of the pandemic. I think we have so much fear being placed in our world through a pandemic, through social media, through the media itself, through, just the access to so much information that is skewed in such a fearful way instead of a productive way, that I think it really is triggering more and more people to be anxious and to be depressed and to have more mental health issues. I don't think that there's necessarily more people. I just think it's more exposed. I think that as we have evolved, when we think about when you and I were kids back in the 80s, where we grew up, there was the thing at that time was HIV and AIDS. That was the scariest thing, but there was a level of protection, because it was like this, if you were straight versus gay, you were less likely to get AIDS because you were straight. So there was an easy division. So the fear was really in one community. Whereas today, fear is everywhere. It shows up everywhere, right? It shows up on commercial, right? You know, the crazy thing, like I always love watching a drug commercial, right? That's promoting some drug because they always list the side effects so nicely spoken, right? And you're like, what? I'm going to bleed out? What? I'm going to have, incontinence? What? This is going to happen to me? But it is spoken in so many different ways. But I think what happens is, like any anxiety is just negative energy that is misplaced, that you need to turn into positive energy and shift the energy to do things that are opportunities and better for you. I think what we constantly get bombarded with is that negative energy that just becomes overwhelming and cannot be consumed. We can't consume all of it. So what we have to learn how to do better is shut it off, right? So if like one of my clients he got rid of Instagram for a week and he felt better, right? We have to we have to have better boundaries, I think, in what we let in. We have this tendency to try to take on other people's shit, and we shouldn't. We have enough of our own shit. We don't need anybody else's. And it's the boundary that you put up. If you can go on social media and focus on keeping it as a boundary for entertainment versus for what you're actually going to be impacted by and what you're going to think about, right? We have that scroll phenomenon, that 3-second memory, right? When you find something interesting, you stay on it because you want to learn and it's not fearful and it's good for you to learn it. But then the things that strike your fear, you flip through faster. It's going to be better for you. I think we have to learn how to set better boundaries on what we allow in from the external world. The news, turn off the news. The news is never filled with good stuff. There's 90% tragedy and disgust and fear. And there's maybe 10% good stuff that comes out of the media on a regular basis. But I really think that if you look at media specifically, the shift in regular news media has become more entertainment media because people are driven by social media, which is more entertainment media. And I think nothing has been able to stay separated. And it's too opinionated on one side. It's not giving a happy medium anymore. No news outlet gives a happy medium. And I think because we see such drastic differences, people who are avoiders and like to avoid conflict, they can't ration the contrast. They can't understand the huge disparity in how wide that pendulum is swinging. And it causes them to further avoid, which causes more anxiety, which causes the overwhelm and the stress and the fear. So I just think it's a lot of what we take in. The short answer, it's all the crap we're taking in. And if we don't know how to filter that crap out, we're in trouble.
You talked about a little bit of a division and boundaries, and I've noticed there's a tremendous bifurcation of philosophies that you're seeing out there, where it's kind of the ability to have the acceptance and vulnerability to put your stress out there in the open and work with others, deal with it, or work through it with yourself. And then there's the other side, which is more of the stoicism, going back kind of where the baby boomers were at and went to war and like grin and bear it and through it, and you got to do that. Is there still value in both of those, or is it particularly to the person, the world need to go in a specific direction? Because I feel there are people that are leaning towards one or the other side so much, and they buy into it almost as a cult-like following.
Yeah, I think there is value in how you decide to look at it, right? I think when there's such differing, like I always seek understanding, and I always seek to know why somebody thinks what they think. Right. So I'm always intrigued. And this is where, my background in psychology and, as a physician assistant, I taught psychiatry, and I just have this huge understanding for mental health and wellness. And I'm always curious in how the brain and the mind behave. And for me, it's more of, why is that person cultish? Or why is that group of people assimilating to what appears to be like a cult. But I think we have many, many, many cults, right? I don't think it's just one cult. And cult has such a negative connotation because of
religion can be considered cult.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think every religion is cultish because what is a cult? A cult is a way of you believe in something and you have a leader and you follow that leader, right? That's all it is, right? There's an ideology, there's a philosophy, there's a thing, and you follow that. And that's what that behavior is. When it becomes obsessive and it becomes where you break from reality, see, there's a split from reality. It's almost schizophrenic in its sense because that's what schizophrenia is, a split from reality. But your reality is not necessarily everybody else's reality. And that's what makes things dangerous at times, right? So religion is talk about the inner judge. My God, like religion to me is the cause of all problem in the world. Religion is the source of all problem because we don't allow people to be fully rational in their religion. We take away, it's more of taking away the rationality of things and going to the extreme, right? When you go to the extreme on something, you become irrational because what is being rational? Rational is being able to see as many sides of something and to be able to come up with what is the main thing that needs to be discussed. What's the main thing that needs to be done, right? We've become irrational. I think society has become irrational. I think extremists, whether you're a progressive Democrat or a conservative Republican, those extremes at times dictate an irrational behavior in you. And you stop seeing a rational, or a word I hate, balance to things, right? We are no longer in any type of balance. If you were to do a chemical equation on the politics of our country and a chemical equation on the religions of the world, those equations would never balance. They would because you could never figure out what the secret ingredient is. They would all explode because that's where we have gone. We've gone to this incredible explosion on many, many swings of the pendulum to the extreme. And I think that's what causes what I see in a lot of people. That's a lot of the beliefs that I'm talking about that I mentioned are beliefs that often come from religion that make us think very differently, which cause conflict, which cause all of that. And I really think that a lot of religion has got it wrong. I frankly think all religion has got it wrong. I think we just need to be self-aware and spiritual and live by one rule. Be good to people. Be good to each other, look out for each other, and do what's right for yourself and each other. And that's the simplest way. If everybody could I just wish there was a time that we can go back to, like when you could get behind a war, you could get behind an initiative, and you can get behind it without this extremism and this hatred and all this other stuff. I really wish we could just come back to a better place of peace and rationality. I think that's the key.
I think that may be much of the issue is that, it's our parents and then you and I do for our children. We've really done everything to give everybody the best possible life. And a lot of that is removed adversity.
Yep.
And life has become simple. And why I was asking about the two sides, mainly stoicism and like super open and vulnerable, is that there almost feels to people like, because there's no adversity, because there's no war to get behind, they may lean into the stoicism without anything to grin and bear, without anything to not complain about. And then on the other side, they feel, well, it's so easy. These small issues that their grandparents would laugh at them for is out in the open, like, why are you crying? And they're in conflict with each other. It seems those two ideologies are in conflict with each other. And I think what I heard from you is that the ideal situation would almost be a renaissance man and be able to have both.
Correct.
There's certain times and places that stoicism is appropriate and don't whine and don't complain and get through it and, be responsible, be an adult, have that grit to do it. And then on the other side, it's like, hey, there are times when, you may be a big, strong man, but you have to cry and you have to say what's going on and you have to let somebody in to help you with that and you aren't left alone. So I think that's
Yeah.
what I'm taking away.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. That is definitely, yeah, it is a renaissance, man, when you think about it.
You know, Tom, you say this very often in a lot of things, coach, and what you've written, is what you believe, and I think even what you live, is that work-life balance is bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
So many people are striving for that. So why do you believe it's bullshit?
I believe it's bullshit because I don't believe anything that we do as human beings could ever be in balance. Because when you pit things against each other, you create a different adversity. You create this weight and shift in balance, and it only causes more struggle for you. I think it's all harmony. I think it's like, stop seeing yourself as 2 or 3 different people. See yourself as one person. Like, when you see yourself as whole, you can live harmoniously. If you see yourself as bifurcated or trifurcated or whatever, quintuplicated, whatever, if you see yourself as all these different people, you're not giving them, you can't give them all the same space that they deserve. But if you see yourself as a whole person, you always have the whole space to give, right? You know, like, you could bounce from one thing to the other in the wholeness, but if you're trying to split and you're pitting things against each other, you're never going to achieve that balance, because something is always going to shift the weight. Something is always going to pull your attention somewhere else. But if you really focus on and are disciplined in giving the things the space at the time that they need the space, and not seeing it as a competition or seeing it as a tug of war, you're going to live life much more smoothly, much more harmoniously. I think that we have a lot of things that we have created as human beings that are just misnomers and have the wrong ideas behind them. Balance being one of them, perfection being another. You know, perfection does not exist. There is no such thing as perfection, yet we strive for perfection. We have come up with ideations that are false ideations that we need to really evaluate. And that's what causes most conflict for people. You know, people who want status, right? We talk about, you know, status is different for everybody, but what does status come down to? It comes to, where do you sit on the level of society in your reality, right? Some people want that and they strive for that. And then when they get it, they realize, what was that all for? It was pointless. It was meaningless. It was not really what I wanted. I just wanted something else that was a byproduct or a benefit of that status. But when I look at it, I could have gotten it another way, right? Like, I always look at it in my own life. You know, I always followed the rules. And I think when you follow the rules, you create competition and you create this need for keeping things in checks and balances, because you're trying to adhere to a standard that somebody has set out for you. I think sometimes you got to throw the rule book out and you just got to do what feels right to you. I grew up in a household where it was go to school, get an education, get a job, work in that job, be successful. Well, that I fought that my entire 20s and 30s. And finally in my 40s, I did what I wanted to do. I got a business and did the business that I always wanted to be in for myself. And, you know, but I had to struggle and have conflict for 20 years. But I want to make a very important point. Adversity is such an important part of what makes us better people and what makes us stronger and what makes us even more self-aware and what our capabilities are. We need adversity to grow, right? When you lift weights, if you don't have the adversity of the weight, you don't grow the muscle. We need that adversity to become stronger. And I think that, you know, when you get stuck on following a rule and you forget that adversity is supposed to strengthen you instead of destroy you, that's what causes the conflict, right? The rule is in place sometimes to strengthen you, not to weaken you, but it's how you decide to see it. And if you constantly see it as negative adversity, then you're going to take a very different road and you're going to wind up on this path that is not good for you. But that's really where, like, adversity is the key to developing the strength to be the better person. But the balance, you can never balance really anything in life. So don't try. because if you try, you're going to cause a lot of conflict.
So I'd like to end these with 2 questions.
Okay.
First one is, what's next for Tom Marino?
Oh boy. That's a great question. What's next for me? The next thing for me is really just getting better at what I do every single day. I think that's the biggest thing is I've lost some of that in the last couple of months and haven't been as focused on it, and I need to refocus. So what's next for me is if I can focus and get better and stronger on the things that I'm trying to do, everything else is going to follow, because all you got to do is change one thing. And, for me, what do I want next as a tangible thing? I want the success that everything that I'm doing to translate into my family's success. And especially when it comes to my children. I mean, I want Andrew to achieve his Division I success. I want my daughter to achieve whatever she decides that she wants for herself. I want my wife to have the success that makes her happy. But really, it's enjoying the health and the wealth and the happiness that I have right now. That's what I would say is what's next for me, is to enjoy these things and continue to be who I am.
Final question. If you could only get one message out to the world, all 7-8 billion people would hear it, but that's the only message, what would it be?
You have a choice. You have a choice in everything that you do. And your choices will determine your reality. And it's up to you.
Tom Marino, thank you.